Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
All right, good morning. We will be starting the course on Introduction to Internal Combustion Engine. As you know, this is a first level course, and here we will start right from basics, what an IC engine is, and go all the way to advanced engine technology. Okay. So the name of the course is Fundamentals of IC Engine. Course number is ME359. This is my web address. My office is Faculty Building 302. Okay, and this is my email ID. You can note it down, akag@iitk.ac.in. If there is any question, you can come down to my office or email me. As far as the books are concerned, there are few fundamental books. As you know, this book, J.B. Haywood, IC Engine Fundamentals, this is the most important book for IC engines. This is like Gita of IC engines. If you have read it, there is nothing, and there is nothing more which is more reliable than this. Okay, so this is the ultimate reading for IC engines. This one book I like to recommend to all my undergraduate students. This is called Gill, Smith and Juris. These were three gentlemen from US Army, US Navy actually. In 1950s this book was written. So it's a very fundamental book, like a novel. So first 12 chapters of this book, you can read it in 2 or 3 days and know a lot about IC engines. Then there are other books. One is the Introduction to IC Engines by Richard Strone. This is also a very good book. Then we have an Indian book by V. Ganeshan. Professor Ganeshan was a professor of mechanical engineering at IIT Madras. And then we have another book by Mathur and Sharma. Another book by our very own professor of IC engine who retired some 6-7 years back, Professor B.P. Pundir. That is also a good book to read. And then for the fundamental aspects, particularly related to thermodynamics, all of you must have studied Sangel and Bowles. So this is one reading which will be helpful in developing the basic understanding of IC engines. If you look at the contents that we are going to cover in next 40 hours, the contents include Introduction to IC Engines, which I am going to do today. We will be looking at working principles. We will also be looking at how we classify the IC engines, different types of classifications. We will look at engine performance parameters, air standard cycle and analysis, comparison of auto and diesel and dual cycles, fuel air cycles and analysis of fuel air cycles, actual cycles and analysis of actual cycles. Conventional fuels, what are the conventional fuels? Gasoline, diesel, natural gas, etc. And then alternate fuels such as biofuels, alcohols, okay, biodiesel, hydrogen. Okay. So all these alternative fuels, we will be touching upon them as well. Then we will be discussing in detail combustion in SI and CI engines. And we will be briefly discussing Wankel engine. Okay. We will be also discussing supercharging and turbocharging in detail, okay, what this is and how it works. We will also be looking at carburation technology, although it is almost obsolete now, but still carburation is important for two-wheelers in India, okay, because if you look at the total number of registered vehicles in India, 80% of them are two-wheelers, motorcycles and scooters. And all of them work on carburation technology. Okay, that is why it is important to study the carburation. Then we will also be discussing the fuel injection in SI engines. So we will be looking at port fuel injection technology and fuel injection systems in CI engines. So this is direct injection. Okay, we will be looking at combustion chamber design, how we design the combustion chamber of different type of engine systems, combustion chamber for SI and CI engines, effect of engine variables on the performance, emissions, etc. of the engines, both SI and CI. We will be looking at knocking. All of you know what knocking is. And then we will be looking at knocking in SI and CI and how it is different from each other. And what's the effect of knocking on the on the engine performance, emissions, durability, structural integrity, etc., etc. We'll also be looking at engine cooling systems, engine friction, and engine lubrication. Okay. Finally, we'll be discussing gasoline direct injection technology. This is a new technology that has come in particularly for the spark ignition engines. So we'll be looking at it in detail. We'll be looking at ignition systems. So basically the spark plug systems, inductive ignition systems, ignition coils, and spark plugs. Okay. And then the last topic will be air pollution, how the pollutants are formed in the engine, how different species are formed in the engine, what are the engine exhaust control technologies, how do you control the emissions using the after treatment of the exhaust. Okay. All right. So if we look at the engine research, engine research mainly started around 1870 in Europe, okay, because people wanted to develop horseless carriages. Before 1870, the transportation was mainly done by horse carriages, and horse carriages have a lot of issues. Particularly, the developed cities of that time, Paris and London. So horse carriages, there were a lot of horse carriages, everybody will ride on the horse carriages, and the horse carriages will have their own problems. What are the problems? Horses will do the droppings on the roads. So come rains, the whole city will stink. Okay? So there was a big motivation for people to look at horseless carriages. Okay? A carriage where there is no horse, so there is no problem of you can keep your city clean and not smelly. So keeping that in mind, there were a lot of competitions organized by different municipalities at that time. Different races were organized, and people were encouraged to come up with new ideas to remove the horse from the carriage. So around 1870, 1880, 1890 was the time when a lot of research and development at individual level were done. Around 1890, 1880, Nicholas Otto invented spark ignition engine. Okay, around 1890, diesel engine was invented by Rudolf Diesel, right? He took a patent on it. So finally, around that time, the engines which were developed were actually good enough to compete a race of about 30 kilometers without breaking down, which was a major achievement at that time. Simultaneously, there were a lot of developments in electrical technology as well. So people were also trying to develop electrical cars at that time. So if you think that electric car is a new idea, it is not. Electric cars actually developed at the same time when IC engine cars were developed, okay, but they somehow could not keep up. So there was a lot of research in Europe, and around the Second World War, there was a place, research center that was set up in University of Wisconsin. This is called Engine Research Center, and this was a center, and this still continues to be the top class research facility, which is augmenting the research and development in the area of internal combustion engines for last 70, 80 years. Okay. So the founder of that Engine Research Center was Professor Phil Myers, and there was another professor called Otto Johara. Okay. So these guys were really the pioneers of modern IC engine era. Of course, he died, he passed away a few years ago. I was fortunate enough to meet him a couple of times. So he made this very interesting statement, and that will actually be very important for this course, and it will put things in perspective. He said that, the engine is the ideal teaching tool. It features all the elements of engineering, all materials, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, lubrication, chemistry, electronics, and now computer science also. The only thing that is missing is nuclear reaction. So almost all disciplines of engineering are covered in internal combustion engine studies. So it's a fairly in fact, it is the most multidisciplinary engineering subject that mechanical engineers are taught. Okay? So I'll start with that, and I'll introduce you to the engines. So before we study the engines, let's look at things at a very high level. And if we look at things at very high level, there are two main devices which convert any form of energy into mechanical work. Because ultimately, if we want to transport ourselves from one place to another place, or if we want to transport goods from one place to another place, we need mechanical energy. And mechanical energy is not available freely. You have some form of energy that is available. It has to be converted into mechanical energy, and it can mainly be converted by two techniques. One is that you can use heat engines or you can use electric motors, and these are one of the fairly old models of the engines which I am making. This is a V6 IC engine. So V means the cylinders are configured as V. So you can see 3 cylinders in this line and 3 cylinders in this line, and all 6 cylinders are powering a single crankshaft. This is the cross section of an electric motor. Okay, so this basically, this one IC engine, it converts the chemical energy of the fuel into mechanical energy using combustion. So you are having fuel which is having carbon and hydrogen. You oxidize it, produce chemical energy by breaking of the bonds between carbon and hydrogen and combination of hydrogen and carbon with oxygen. That energy, that heat is released, and then finally you convert into mechanical energy or shaft energy. Similarly, in electrical motor, you supply it with electricity, and this electricity is then converted into rotary motion or shaft motion, which you can finally somehow transfer to the wheels and move your vehicle from one place to another place. Okay, so engine, basically if you define the engine is a device that convert one form of the energy into mechanical energy. For example, heat engines or electric motor. So electric motor is also a kind of engine. It is not internal combustion engine. Engine really means a power plant or something which gives you mechanical work output. But if you look at specifically the heat engines, so heat engine, basically heat is generated. How the heat is generated? By using fuel or by burning the fuel. So chemical energy of the fuel is first converted to heat by process of combustion. Okay, and all of you must have studied combustion. Carbon plus oxygen is equal to carbon dioxide plus heat. Hydrocarbons plus oxygen is equal to carbon dioxide plus H2O plus heat. Is it that simple? If it was that simple, we will be living in a very clean world. Combustion is extremely complicated, my dear friends, and I think we have to understand. In fact, nobody has totally understood it so far. And the fact of the matter is that we are running IC engines for close to 125 years now, but there are more questions than answers as to why the IC engine actually runs. If you look at the answers of why the combustion happens and what is happening in those milliseconds or microseconds where the hydrocarbon is getting converted into carbon dioxide and water plus hundreds and thousands of other chemical species, nobody knows, because everything happens extremely fast. In spite of having best computers, best lasers, best technology. So I'll talk about it later, but just on a very high level, heat that you are generating via combustion, via this process of oxidation, you are converting it to mechanical energy with the help of a working fluid. In this case, when you talk about IC engines, what is the working fluid? So there are two working fluids. One is the air and the other one is fuel. So one is liquid, the other one is gas. Fuel can also be gaseous. For example, you can choose to have CNG or LPG or hydrogen. So these are gaseous fuels. So working fluids can be either liquid or gas. What happens is that when you do the combustion, intense heat is produced during combustion, and when in a chamber, combustion chamber, when you have intense heat generation because of this oxidation, what will happen? The pressure and temperature will rise, and what you do is you use that pressure and temperature and use it to push your piston down. Okay, so you have a reciprocating motion. Piston is pushed down, and then you convert it via a crank slider mechanism, you convert into shaft motion, which you can use for your transportation purposes. So heat is produced during combustion, it increases the pressure and temperature, and then you allow this working fluid to expand and extract mechanical work out of it. So this is a typical modern EcoSport engine of about 1.5 liter. It's a 3-cylinder engine. So this is a brief story about IC engine, of how it works, or for that matter heat engine. So this heat engine actually are of two types. One is the external combustion engine, the other one is internal combustion engine. What is external combustion engine? External combustion engine is an engine where the combustion takes place outside the engine, outside the cylinder, okay, not inside the cylinder. If it takes place inside the cylinder, then it is called internal combustion engine. What are the examples of external combustion engine? You must have seen that, there used to be a steam locomotive. Of course, it was obsolete before you were born, right? But you must have seen the pictures, and now there are some heritage trains. What happens there? You have a boiler, you fire the coal in it, and then steam is generated, and then that steam goes into a cylinder piston assembly. So the engine is that cylinder piston assembly, and the combustion is take place outside the cylinder. Where it is taking place? In the boiler. That's why it is called external combustion engine. Okay. Another external combustion engine is thermal power plant, like our Panki power plant here in our neighborhood. What happens there? There also we are having a boiler. Okay. How big is that boiler? The boiler of a power plant can be twice as high as faculty building. So about 12, 14 floors of metallic structure. And there you feed the coal and you feed the oxygen, and then you generate steam, very high pressure steam. And then that steam goes and it expands in a steam turbine. So what is the engine in this case? The steam turbine. Where the combustion is taking place? Outside the steam turbine. So that's why it is called external combustion engine. So combustion takes place outside the control volume. There is a use of heat exchanger for the transfer of energy, because you want to make your process more efficient. So whatever waste energy is going, you use the heat exchanger to recover some of the heat and put it back to the working fluid. It can be open cycle or closed cycle. Open cycle, in which the working fluid only passes through the system once, control volume once. Closed cycle means it is recycled again and again. Okay. The examples are steam engines and power plants. On the other hand, if you look at the internal combustion engines, the combustion is happening inside the engine. Okay. So it's within the control volume. So open cycle, definitely open cycle. No internal combustion engine is closed cycle. Please understand this. None. So the working fluid is replenished. So the air is coming in, combustion takes place, air goes out. Where does it go? Into the environment. Okay. So exhaust gas is dumped into the atmosphere. So obviously when the combustion takes place, there are a lot of undesirable combustion products also. So they are also dumped, and that's why we say that internal combustion engines cause pollution. Okay. So the examples are reciprocating engines. If you look at gas turbines, in gas turbines are also internal combustion engines, because in the gas turbines also the combustion takes place inside the turbine itself. Some of the examples, for example, all of you must have sat in the jet planes. Jet plane is powered by engines. So the air is coming from the front of the aircraft, combustion is taking place inside that engine, and then exhaust is going out. So the combustion is taking place within the control volume of the engine. So that's why it is also, gas turbine is also a internal combustion engine. Steam turbine, is it an internal combustion engine? No, it is not. It is a external combustion engine. So if you look at, I gave you an example. This is the example of a nuclear reactor. Okay. So here is the nuclear reactor core, and then here you are raising the steam. The steam passes through a turbine. Turbine rotates because of the expansion of the steam. There is a generator. What does the generator do? Generates the electricity, which comes to our homes and industries. And then this low pressure, low temperature steam, what we do is we take it to a condenser. Okay. And we have some cooling water, and we condense the steam back into water, and then we have a pump. We pressurize it, and then we put it back to the core, nuclear core. So this is a external. Here actually there is no combustion, but it's a boiling water reactor. Okay. So external heat engine. So combustion takes place inside the combustion chamber. Use of heat exchanger to transfer the working energy. This could be open cycle or closed cycle. If you replace this with a boiler, it becomes a external combustion engine, which is thermal power plant. Okay. So here the heat is generated in the reactor vessel. Here there is no combustion happening, nuclear reactions are happening. But if we replace this with a boiler, then coal will be fed, right? Steam will be generated, then it becomes a external combustion engine. Okay. Similarly, this is an example of steam locomotive. Okay. So here what is happening is steam is coming in and it is expanding, and this leads to reciprocating motion of the shaft, and through this crank slider mechanism this motion is transferred to the wheels. You must have seen that in the old locomotives they used to have big wheels because you wanted to transfer more torque. Okay. And if you just have small spokes and small wheels, the locomotive will not be able to propel fast. Okay. So, so this is another example of external combustion engine. Now coming to the internal combustion engine, and this is basically a stripped down model of the internal combustion engine. We have removed the cylinder liners, etc., so that you can see the motion of everything. So here you can see there are pistons, connecting rods, and this is the crankshaft. So you can see piston is having a reciprocating motion, but finally the shaft is having a rotary motion, and this is reciprocating motion is converted into rotary motion by a mechanism called crank slider mechanism. Okay. And here you have every cylinder has some valves basically for the intake of the working fluid and exhaust of the working fluid. The opening and closing is controlled by the camshaft, and everything is talking to each other via a timing belt. Okay. So exactly at a certain point when the piston is at a certain location, one valve will open, and exactly at certain location another valve will open, this one will close. Okay. And that is governed by the design of the cams. Okay. So, so obviously this is open cycle, and in every cycle the working fluid is replenished, air comes in, combustion takes place, exhaust goes out. You can't put it back. I wish you could, but you cannot. Okay, because you have, when the combustion takes place, all the oxygen is converted into carbon dioxide, and if you put carbon dioxide back, next combustion will not take place. So that's why it is called open cycle. So every time you take fresh air in, there is fresh oxygen, and finally it is converted into carbon dioxide. And this exhaust gas that has carbon dioxide, it also has water vapors, it also has lot of undesirable combustion products. They are all dumped into the atmosphere. What are those undesirable combustion products? So if you look at the IC engines, you know, there could be carbon monoxide, there could be hydrocarbons, there could be oxides of nitrogen, there could be sulfur oxides. If the fuel contains sulfur, the engine itself is not going to make sulfur. So if your fuel does not have sulfur, there will be no sulfur, SOx emissions. There could be particulate matter emissions, and there could be other minor emissions of what we call as unregulated species. There could be hundreds and thousands of hydrocarbons which are in very, very small concentrations. So exhaust coming out of the internal combustion engine is an extremely complex amalgamation or mixture of different chemicals which are produced by the process of combustion. Many of these species may be present in the fuel and they are going without getting affected, but many of them are generated. You have to understand that when the combustion takes place in the engine, it's high pressure, it's high temperature, and the time is extremely small. Okay? So it acts like a very fast chemical reactor, and when the chemical reactions take place, you are not very sure what species are getting formed. Okay? So we know some of them, we can measure some of them, but not all of them. If we just look at the basic parts of an internal combustion engine, there are some models here. I will show them to you. If you look at this, this is a piston which moves up and down, and this is the most important place in the engine. This is called combustion chamber. Okay? This is the place where the pressure is generated by combustion, and this is the oil sump or crankcase. Okay? So this is the crankcase. Here you have lubricating oil. This is what is connecting rod. This is the crankshaft here. Okay. Then here cylinder, you have some coolant running through the cylinder because you don't want this to get overheated. Then you have some valves, there may be intake valve, there may be exhaust valve. These are spring loaded valves because normally you would like to keep them closed. Okay. When you want to open them, there is a cam and then there is a rocker arm. So rocker arm is going to push the the cam is going to push the rocker arm, and then rocker arm in turn is going to push the valve against the force of the spring. Okay. So the valve will open, and as soon as the cam leaves the rocker arm and relaxes it, the spring will bring that valve up and close it. And this happens in really in fractions of milliseconds, very, very fast. Okay. So, and then top cover is called rocker arm cover. This is rocker arm, this is the spring, camshaft, these are the cam lobes, one lobe for intake valve opening, another one for exhaust valve opening. And if every cylinder of the engine that you have has 2 intake and 2 exhaust, then you have 2 of these, four cam lobes for each cylinder. Okay. And then you have coolant running all over the place. This part is called cylinder head. The top part of the engine is called cylinder head. So this one is cylinder head, and this is the cylinder block. Okay. Engine block also it is called. And this is the oil pan. And then you see what is happening here. You have a mass which is moving in this way. Okay. So if you don't balance the forces, there will be a lot of problem. You will not be able to run. So you have to have counterbalances so that some forces, at least some primary and secondary forces, are partially balanced. So you have these counterweights. Okay. And so these counterweights actually move in opposite directions. So when the piston is coming down, they try to go up, and when the piston is going up, they go down. Okay. So that's how they balance the forces, and that's how the bearings of the crankshaft are prevented from jerky motion and prevented from failure. Okay. Otherwise this will fail. So as I said, engine block is the body of the engine, piston is the reciprocating part which reciprocates inside the cylinder and transfers the pressure. What is the function of the piston? You are doing the combustion on top of the piston, and it is surrounded by liner and cylinder head, which cannot move. The only part which can move is piston. So whatever pressure you are generating in the combustion chamber is going to apply the pressure force on the piston top, and piston will start moving down. That's the only part which has flexibility of movement. Okay. So basically it transfers all the gas power generated by the gases or the pressure force due to high pressure gases, they are transferred to the piston. Okay. Piston moves down, and through the connecting rod and crankshaft, it is then converted into rotary motion. Okay. So finally all this pressure force is transferred to the crankshaft. So reciprocating motion inside the cylinder, and this transfers the power to crankshaft through the connecting rod. Cylinder, of course, is the volume inside which the combustion takes place. So it's called combustion chamber also. So basically combustion chamber is nothing but a volume which is enclosed by the cylinder head and the liner and the piston. That's called combustion chamber, where the combustion takes place. Normally very close to the top dead center. Okay. Cylinder head is the top portion of the cylinder in which you are having fuel injector, spark plug, all the valves, all the rocker arm, everything is housed there. So that's the cylinder head. And crankshaft, where you are actually drawing the final output from the engine, and you have a shaft, and then you can have whatever you want. For example, you can have a gearbox, and from the gearbox you can have a differential, and then from a differential you can connect the wheels of the vehicle. Okay, if it is a vehicular application, or if you are using an agricultural machine, so the shaft will be connected to the agriculture machine, which could be anything, which could be a water pumping application or maybe crop cleaning application, whatever you want. So crankshaft is where finally the engine output is coming out. And connecting rod, so the function of the connecting rod is basically it's a connecting member between the piston and crankshaft. Okay. Camshaft, this controls the opening and closing of the valves. Okay. Crankcase is the lower part of the engine which is surrounding the camshaft. Intake valve, what is the intake valve? As the name suggests, it's a valve So it allows or not allow a particular fluid to come in. So intake valve means it allows the flow of intake air or intake air fuel mixture, as the case may be. Okay, exhaust valve is just the opposite. It allows the exhaust residual gases from the engine combustion chamber to be pushed out into the atmosphere. So one allows the working fluid to come in, another one allows the exhaust of the working fluid from the cylinder to the atmosphere. So if we look at the entire heat engine scenario of how many types of heat engines are there. So if you just look at it at a very high level. So now what we understand is that there is a heat engine is a big family, and this big family is divided into internal combustion engines and external combustion engine. The external combustion engines could be reciprocating or they could be rotary type. What is the reciprocating external combustion engine? It could be a steam engine, such as in steam locomotive, and they were also used in a lot of industrial applications, or Stirling engines. Okay, I will not go into details of what Stirling engine is. Rotary, so this could be steam turbines or this could be closed cycle gas turbines. Okay, in closed cycle gas turbines also you are not doing the combustion in the turbine, you are doing it in a boiler or in a device where in a combustion chamber, and then transferring that heat through a heat exchanger to the working fluid. So these are the rotary external combustion engine. Coming to the most important part, which is the IC engines, which we are going to discuss in this course. Again, these are two types, rotary and reciprocating. So rotary are basically open cycle gas turbines, such as the ones used in aircrafts, and the Wankel engines. What is this Wankel engine? Wankel engine is a rotary internal combustion engine. I have this model here which shows the Wankel engine. So if you look at it here, this is the piston. Okay, so if you look at the piston, it is a triangular piston, almost triangular piston, and this is the spark plug. Okay, here, and there are two ports here. There is no valve here. Two ports here. So what I will request you is focus only on one edge, because each of these edge acts as one cylinder. Just focus on one edge. So now I am here. This port is intake port. The air comes in, so this thing is filled with air. Okay. Now this is filled with air, expanding. So it's sucking the air in, air fuel mixture in, and then I start compressing it. Now look at the volume is reducing. Okay. Now this is very, very low volume. Then I apply the spark here, and when I apply the spark, what happens? Combustion takes place and pressure will generate, and this pressure is going to push this piston in this direction, right? And then the expansion takes place. You come here, this is now gases are fully expanded, and then you come here, exhaust port is open, so all these gases will go out, right? Now you look at this, this volume is reducing, so that means all the remaining gases are also being pushed out. So now this again reduces, very low volume, and then intake port opens, so fresh charge comes in. Now you see, in one rotation every edge is behaving like this. So that means the advantage of the Wankel engine, it's a rotary engine, there is no reciprocating motion, it's a rotary engine. The advantage is that you are getting 3 power stroke in one rotation of the crankshaft. That means what? With a small size engine you will be able to extract very high amount of power. Of course it has a lot of technical issues, that's why you are not running motorcycles which are running on Wankel engines today. Okay, because the efficiency is poor, there are leakage issues and all that. But the fact of the matter is that this engine, you can make a very small engine which is very light and it can give you extremely high power. Where do you need such application? Can you tell me what is the main application? For example, you must have seen that UAVs. Okay, in UAVs you don't care about fuel economy, you just care about how much light your aircraft can be, how much light your power plant can be. Okay, so UAVs, like for example, India is now planning to have Nishant UAV for surveillance purposes. This is going to use the Wankel engine. So Wankel engine does not have many applications because of the efficiency issues, but it has certain applications in defense where you need very high power to be generated and you don't really too much worry about efficiency. Okay? So Wankel engine is one such rotary engine. Now coming to the main part, reciprocating engines. Reciprocating engines are mainly, reciprocating internal combustion engines are mainly two types. One is the gasoline engine, the other one is diesel engine. So when you say gasoline engine, you are basically saying spark ignition engine. That means the ignition is happening by application of spark. And when you say diesel engines, you are basically talking about compression ignition engine. The compression increases the pressure and temperature, you inject the fuel, and auto ignition takes place because the fuel has low auto ignition temperature. Okay? So if you look at the terminology, there are few other terminologies that I would like to introduce to you. For example, let's talk about this particular engine. This is a two-stroke spark ignition engine, which is typically used in a scooter. Of course, now no scooter uses two-stroke technology, but if you look at old Priya scooter or old scooters, they used to use two-stroke engine technology. So if you look at, I'll just rotate it for you. Okay. I will explain its working to you slightly later. Just let's focus on the terminology. So you see, if you look at the rotary motion, there is a certain point, highest point up to which the piston goes. Piston doesn't go all the way. Piston goes up to a certain point. That's the highest point it can reach, which is called top dead center. It's called TDC. And if you go at the lower side, there is a certain lowest point, which is called bottom dead center. Okay. So the difference in terms of length between the top dead center and bottom dead center is called stroke length. The diameter of this bore, this is called bore. Diameter of this cylinder is called bore. When the piston is at top dead center, whatever volume is here, that's called clearance volume. Okay? So that's what we want to see here. Top dead center, this is the extreme piston position, very close to the cylinder top. Bottom dead center is extreme piston position, very close to the crankcase, so when it goes to the lowest point. Clearance volume is the volume of the combustion chamber above the piston, so you put the piston at the top. Okay. Please understand that when you are talking about clearance volume, you see this piston is kind of crooked. It is not flat piston. So when you are calculating the volume, you have to take into account the curvature of the cylinder head as well as the curvature of piston. So whatever is the volume enclosed with all these irregularities, it will be counted as clearance volume. Okay. Swept volume, what is swept volume? Swept volume is nothing but the volume swept by the piston when it moves from the one extreme position to another one. Okay. Now it's very easy. I mean, you don't have to really worry about, in this case, you don't have to really worry about the curvature or shape of the piston. Only thing, if you have to calculate the VD, the simple way to calculate is you look at what is the stroke and multiply it with the bore area. So bore, not just bore, it's pi d square by 4, right? Pi d square by 4 multiplied by the stroke, and that will give you the swept volume. And if you look at the compression ratio, now compression ratio definition is extremely important, and students make a lot of error while calculating the compression ratio. So I will just show you a simple way so that you don't make a mistake when you attempt this question. Suppose this is my TDC and this is my BDC, and this is my piston. Here I have the rings. Okay. This is the diameter and this is my, actually I should not confuse you, let me make it here. This is BDC. Okay, so this is L. So VD, what is VD? VD will be pi d square by 4, that's the bore area, because this is circular, multiplied by L, right? This volume is clearance volume, and this volume now is Vs, swept volume. Okay? So if I have to calculate the compression ratio can be calculated as Vs plus Vc by Vc. Swept volume plus clearance volume by clearance volume. That's the definition. But sometimes, people get confused and they make errors. Sometimes people put Vs by Vc. So simple way to not make mistake is not remember this definition. Rather remember another definition which I am going to tell you. You say that compression ratio is simply the volume of the cylinder when the piston is at BDC divided by the volume of the cylinder when the piston is TDC. You will not make this mistake. So the highest volume divided by the lowest volume. So Vs plus, when the piston is BDC, what will be the swept, what will be the maximum volume? This will be clearance volume plus swept volume. That will be highest volume, right? And minimum volume when the piston is TDC. So the simple way to remember this is volume of the cylinder when the piston is at BDC divided by the volume of the cylinder when the piston is TDC. That gives you the definition of compression ratio. Okay. Please understand that the compression ratio for spark ignition engine is much lower than the compression ratio for diesel engines. Compression ratio for spark ignition engines can be as low as 7, 8, and it can maximum it can go to 11 to 12. In fact, 12 is very difficult. Okay. So that's the ratio. But if you look at the diesel engines compression ratio can be 11 to 12 starting minimum, and it goes all the way to 24. Okay. So it has a wide compression ratio. In fact, most of the diesel engines used in automotive applications have a compression ratio of either 16.5, 17, 17.5, and people are now not occupying this entire range. They are now coming to a very narrow range. They are zeroing onto a narrow range because of the emission constraints. Because the emission legislations have become very, very tight. So now the entire automotive industry is coming to, for spark ignition engine, this is 9.5 to 10.5. For compression ignition engines, particularly in the passenger vehicles segment, this is about 16.5 to 17.5. That's, I'm not saying that this is the only range, but this is the range which majority of the applications will use, right? But it's not that you cannot use the 24 compression. You can, of course, in most of the indirect injection engines, you use higher compression ratios. I'll come to it. So stroke is basically the linear distance traveled between the TDC and BDC. Okay.